While I was waiting for some technical snafus to work their way out, I stopped at Goodwill. And I never, ever let a technical difficulty slow me down. Yeah, I collect 45s, but when you get LPs that are this clean, and for $3, and I looked inside, the vinyl's real clean, I pick up LPs all the time. So you got to love LPs when you find them. First of all, Roger Miller, Golden Hits on Smash, clean as can be. You got all of them right there. You just got to have that record. Red Fox, I pick up comedy albums. A lot of times these things are pretty raunchy, and this is the way these guys could get past the censors, just put stuff on an LP. Once again, look at how clean that is. That's probably from the 60s. Red Foley, he's an old country guy. I've heard him do some duets. I've heard him on Willie Nelson's Outlaw Country channel quite a bit. And I'm looking forward to hearing his version of Lucky Old Son. If you remember, Johnny Cash did that one. So that'll definitely go on the turntable as soon as I get home. Look at how clean that is. And you can't forget Chubby Checker, Limbo Rock. He had to follow up the Twist. So maybe the Limbo is the next dance craze. Maybe not as big as the Twist. But, Chubby shows up on a lot of those Northern Soul lists as having some of the best songs. So I don't know, but maybe some of these are Northern Soul hits on here. We'll find out, right? The Bossa Nova, Limbo Rock. I remember Jamaican Farewell. These are all sort of, Caribbean type songs, but we'll give it a listen. All right, back to the library, because I'm in the North Woods, and that's the only place that I can load up this coming episode. So stay tuned. Vinyl's making a comeback when your public library has embraced it. This place has almost looks like a record store. Let's check it out. Check out some of this vinyl. This is the library. That's why I'm whispering. Some Bowie, some Cher. Some weird pop. Not bad, eh? All right, I gotta go back to my favorite shop called RPM Records, and we're arriving right now. Gotta love RPM. They've been around since 2010. Much longer if you count the years they were in the stereo business. It's always cool when you're greeted at the door by a friendly dog. This is Leland, and he's so gentle and nice. You just gotta love him. All right, Detroit Bob, I'm back at RPM Records, and you gotta remember, these guys were in the stereo business for a long time before they ever opened a vinyl shop in 2010. And the original owner passed away a few years ago. And it's such a shame because he really, really got me back into vinyl, and he sold me the Who's Quadrophenia album. If you need any old school equipment, there's some decent stuff here. So you could pick up like a 1970s setup for a decent amount of money. You don't have to break the bank. Back when they used to use real wood. Did somebody say reel to reel? Wow, I used to have one. And obviously they fixed stuff here too. So, and they got new stuff. You need a new Audio Technica, it's up there. For those of you who are figurine collectors, we got Alice Cooper, we got Rancid, we got Slick Rick, we got Kwame, we got Jimi Hendrix. I think that's one of the most creepy hobbies of all time. Adult males who collect figurines. You see a lot of these 7-inch packages. Here's one about the Black Keys. That would be sort of cool. That actually might be very cool. Here's that 7-inch box by the Stones. I've had my eyes on this for a while, which is pretty cool. I mean, 63 to 66. all the original picture sleeves. 183 bucks, but you want to get cool brand new 45s, there you go. Looks like you got the whole thing covered. I've seen Robert Plant live, and this technically could be considered an album. So it's a booklet or collection of 45s, so it is an album. An LP became an album by collecting a bunch of songs on one record. But originally, even back in the days of 78, albums were just collections of songs in a literal album, like a photo album. The Jacksons are everywhere, and there's a reason why Michael's got 350 plus followers or YouTube channels about him. I forgot how good their merchandise is out on the floor here. I mean, they got everything new and old. One of my favorite poster artists is Gary Grimshaw. And this is one of his that he did for Rob Tyner. Nice lineup. You got the Romantics on there too. The Rationals, Goober and the Peas. And there he is right there, Gary Grimshaw, R.I.P. I think he's just as good as the San Francisco poster artists. So another good poster artist, this guy here, his name is Mark Arminsky, and I bought one of his posters before. Sort of in that, he's a modern guy, but in that San Francisco tradition. Color and graphics are incredible. I could be wrong, but that could be Carl Lundgren. Or it could be Rick Griffin. Here's the Primus box set that Jack White issued. How cool is that? Oh, that's a jukebox. All right, back into the bowels of the beast. Tim has curated an impressive 45 collection back in the 45 room. And that's where I always head. I don't even know where to start. I'm so geeked up. I just know I have the Northern Soul list that I've been working off of, and that's really a good start. I'm entering a different phase of my collecting where I'm not just going off of, oh, I love that song. Oh, I love that song. I'm actually doing research and finding specific 45s that totally ring a lot of bells. One of them is connection, another is cost, another is value. And collectability, I think, is a big one too, because I want other people to benefit off of my collecting, if that makes sense. Once again, I never seem to have enough time. So I'm just zipping through files left and right. I do have Tim in the wings, but I just can't get my adrenaline to calm down enough to zero in on really specific Northern Soul titles. So I'm sort of freestyling, and I've had a lot of good luck with this technique. I know what to look for. I know what my sweet spot is, but you never know. You could get bogged down and go down a rabbit hole where you walk home with 10 bread records. No offense, great band, but I have to start to collect a genre. I have to realize Detroit Bob is potentially the spokesperson for 45s everywhere from Toronto to Iowa in the Lake Belt region. So that's where I really, really need to start focusing in on, and that's really my goal. I always go to RPM, and I always start in a different end of the back room. I don't want to retrace my steps. I want to get fresh stuff before my eyes. And I always want to touch base with Tim And I've done all that. So I'm really, really hoping that something just jumps out at me as fresh and new. I've seen a couple new bins, but I don't want to look through the same old stuff that I looked through last time I was here because I already picked through it. I really, really got to get better at identifying my target records, Northern Soul, and I'm always looking for Beatles 498. Don't get me wrong, but I'm realizing that may be the needle in the haystack, and that really, really is the Holy Grail. I have a feeling I'm going to be sitting across the table from a serious collector and asking him how many thousands of dollars does he want for that record. But I'm not giving up yet. If I can find it in the wild, I will. So sit tight, hang tight. We're on a journey together. There's some wild stuff back here. I'm pulling out some kind of Jamaican or Bahamian souvenir 45 that looks relatively obscure with some weird artwork on the cover. If you can get your hands on reggae, it's even more rare than blues because they may have only copied or printed 500 of these records off of their machine. And you're talking about millions of records coming off of the ARP record printing presses up in Oswego, Michigan. So you just got to realize that blues, jazz, and reggae are subspecialties of the overall music record market. But they're very collectible. They were printed in less numbers, and therefore the rarity goes up, which drives the price up. So you want to give due diligence to your jazz, your blues, and your reggae. And in the meantime, maybe put your Northern Soul as your front page. It's not a bad little technique to have. All that being said, don't be afraid to go outside your favorite genre. If there's a gem in your hand and it looks rare and it's got all the right coloring, all the right text, and all the right feel to be a gem, pick it up. I've done this many times where I've totally picked up something obscure that I paid $1 or maybe $3 for and ends up being a $25 record. So take your time, go through these bins one by one. And this applies to LPs too. Just keep flipping until you find that one that makes your heart beat and the one you know is valuable, and then pick it up. You got to remember, I'm selling records on Discogs, so look up Detroit Bob on Discogs. Make sure you subscribe to these episodes so that we can keep going throughout the world to do this kind of thing. I got New Orleans coming up the end of this month. We're going to be going out to Florida again over on the other side of the state at the end of the year. And I will get back to several Midwest cities between now and the end of the year. And this is where these gems are sitting, just waiting to be picked up for a song. So don't be afraid to dive into your local music store, your vinyl hut, whatever you want to call it, and look for great old records. You know, I've talked before about being a kid and just flipping through records, 10, 11, 12 years old, for hours on end. And my mom used to do laundry at the laundromat, and I would sneak next door to the grocery store that had a record bin. Believe it or not, back in the day, a lot of grocery stores had a whole LP section. And I would flip through those LPs one by one from A to Z, and I would listen to the radio during the week and memorize what I heard on the radio so that I could just catch a glimpse of that song or that band or that record in the bin. And I couldn't even afford to buy it if I did find the right perfect record. But I looked at it, I would read the cover front and back, and I would memorize the track listing, and I would figure out what the hell was going on with this band and this song or these songs.
I'm in the B
I knew someday I would be able to afford
best spend my time
to buy records,
go
but
through the B's and look
back
for
then, whether it be
Beach
Harmony
Boys,
House
Beatles.
and Metro Detroit or
I'm gonna go
Tom's
quick.
Market up in
So I don't have
Northern
a lot of time,
Michigan,
which is
or
always the case.
the old arcade
You know, I could spend
Front
an hour
Street
here.
up in Traverse
Boy, they're
City,
trying to say no to
Michigan.
that one. That's
I was doing a lot of looking,
smoking in the boys' room on
and
that label.
not a lot of buying because I just didn't have any money. Let's face it, records are a time capsule of memories. The imprint on your neurology probably started from the first time you ever heard that needle drop onto that 45 RPM or 33 and a third RPM piece
Brothers
of
Johnson.
PVC
Hard to say
vinyl,
no to some of these.
whatever you want to call it. It
Brothers
really gets seared into your memory if
Brothers
you are young, and I think a lot of us were imprinting these vinyl
Crows.
sounds onto our hard drives, if you
Crows.
will, from the age of
Born in
10,
Pride.
11, 12 onward. I mean, it started with 45
Born in
RPM,
Pride.
and our big brothers and big sisters collections sitting on the bedroom playing on a little 45 RPM player. And then it graduated into LPs, and we had some of the greatest live LPs, double LPs, and just to live through the era where Led Zeppelin was plopping down new vinyl
Chess.
throughout our
It says
teen
chess.
years was huge. Just can't be understated. So going back and starting a vinyl collection for me has been like therapy. I mean, just going down memory lane, digging through these titles. And then I'm an armchair historian. I love history. So I go back and I research these LPs, these vinyl little gems, these 45s. I look them up on Wikipedia, and I do the homework, and I discover, wow, like this band just was a one-hit wonder, but they were really, really, really a good band. And, you just find out the history of, not only the artists, but the record label itself and the record industry itself. What the hell was going on in this melting pot we call the United States? So as I look through these boxes, yes, I have a Northern Soul checklist that I'm trying to knock off, but I'm pulling pieces of my childhood memory out and looking at them
Overwhelmed.
incarnate for the first time in maybe 45 or 50 years. Fortunately, Tim's gotten me a rare invite into the back room, and these are unsorted, unfiled records. Somebody just dropped off a collection. Of course, I go to the B's because the B's have your Beatles, your Beach Boys, your Bob Seger, and your Bob Dylan, just for starters. So you never know how these guys categorize or alphabetize
All you gotta do is
things,
DJ
but
sleeves and
that's the way Discogs does it. So your B-Box is a good
$4.98.
place to start because Beach Boys and Beatles and Bob Dylan are all going to be right there. Probably the three biggest cultural icons of the 60s right under your nose. Yeah, you're going to want to jump up to the R's for the Rolling Stones, but
just
don't
weird.
forget your B-Box. And if there's no Bob Dylan, jump up to the D's because they might have done it under Dylan. So you got to be ready to roll. You got to be able to go left and go right on these boxes because you only got so much time. The good news, I'm getting a little bit more patient and a little bit more discriminating in what I pull out of these boxes. Soul records, to me, are the underpinning of all R&B and therefore rock and roll that came afterward. I think a lot of rock and roll was R&B pumped up and cleaned up for a broader suburban kid audiences, but really it was the gritty R&B classic that you almost want to go back and get your hands on. A lot of these live albums and 70s albums that we heard growing up in Detroit or Chicago or Cleveland or Massachusetts or Memphis or LA were rehashes of the original old R&B classics. So why not go back and give them justice by buying them and listening to them and seeing what it really was meant to sound like? And pulling old Northern soul, R&B, jazz, and blues classics is, I think, really where you want to live. And I have firsthand memories of all these old songs. My sisters were running around singing Jimmy Mac with their hair up in towels. They were singing Supreme songs. I was listening to Hit the Road Jack by Ray Charles. I was jumping up and down to the Temptations. And really, I was bathed in it. And that was just sort of the normal palette growing up in Detroit. The airwaves were full of Stevie Wonder. They were full of the Temptations, the Four Tops. They were full of the Supremes. They were full of anything that Motown put its finger on, because the local stations would definitely favor a Motown track, and so they got favorable play over anybody else. So what might have been a minor hit nationally was a huge hit in Detroit for a Motown track, and definitely they sold a shit ton of records in the Metro Detroit era. I remember listening to the old CKLW radio station, and it seemed like even into the 70s, every other song seemed to be Motown or Motown related. The funny thing is what we started hearing on Detroit radio in 60s, 70s was Motown covers. Like Rare Earth, Get Ready. That's a Temptation song, but a lot of us heard more of that cover than we did the original. And Rod Stewart, I Know I'm Losing You, was huge. And it was an old Temptation song, but to hear Rod Stewart do it, it gave it all new life off the great album Every Picture Tells a Story. How about the Stones doing Just My Imagination on Some Girls? I mean, that was like, it was so stripped down and raw. How about them doing Ain't Too Proud to Beg? A couple albums earlier.
Yeah, he does. Dude.
And it was
Especially
just
when
like,
it comes to
wow,
45.
these songs are so good.
I don't know how long he's been here. I've
that
only been here
other
for a year, but man, he's
British
got knowledge.
invasion
I like
artists
your shirt.
just
got
started
vinyl.
Yes, sir.
like
RPM
nailing
records.
that.
Right
You know,
there.
remember the Beatles'
Representing.
second album had
That's
three
right.
Motown. songs on it. You know, Please Mr. Postman. You know, so it got to be where
Let's see.
people were taking Motown songs and putting them in their own
30. How's that work?
live double LP, you know.
How's business, man?
Business is booming,
just
dude.
can't
I mean, it's Friday and it
underestimate
looks kind
the
of empty right now,
influence.
but it's because of the cloud, they tell you.
Right. I was over at the library and they even have a vinyl section over there.
They do. I thought that was kind of cool. They got like some of the stuff they have in there we don't even have.
Like they got some rare jazz. The guy said, yeah, someone donated their collection.
And they went to the wrong place. They should have came here first.
I know. Well, I'll be back. Tim's always got a great setup back there. I love his 45s.
Dude, Tim is awesome.
Yeah, I think the fact that you donate that floor space. Another successful outing at RPM Records. Got into the back room. Tim was really good. Got a little tour in, self-guided. And I recommend this place. It's in Traverse City, Michigan. Check it out. One thing about hunting vinyl is you got to hang out with good friends and you got to be out partying with the Broomstick Boys. These guys are freaking awesome. And it's the 4th time I've seen them. And I recommend them if you ever get in Traverse City because they play stuff like this.
Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. Open your eyes, look up to the skies and see.
All right, I'm up in Traverse City. Michigan is a great stop. This is my first vinyl, buddy. We used to sit around and listen to 45s. We graduated the albums. I think you bought Frampton Comes Alive.
Frampton Comes Alive, 1976.
And then I got the Bob Seger.
That's right.
So we made sure we didn't ask for the same thing for our birthdays. This is where it all began.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. One thing about
Good day
Michigan,
of
you're never
vinyl
far away
hunting.
from water.
Capped off
And
by a nice
music,
evening overlooking the
Vinyl
bay.
records
It just doesn't
and
get any
rock and
better
roll
than that.
is
I
what the
gotta get
state's all
home.
about.
Tomorrow I'll go through my finds and I'll review some of them with you. But this has been a great vinyl hunt and a great weekend in northern Michigan.
I just can't escape the water. So one thing about Michigan, there's lots of water. Yeah, what was that, a garage sale thing? Hey, it's Detroit Bob, and when I'm not driving around listening to music, I'm driving my pontoon listening to nature. So it's one of those days. Hopefully I'll get some good weather and chill out by the lake.
Did you bring a fleece? Okay. I need it.
One thing about being up north is you can chill out listening to the nature sounds, or you can always bring a Bluetooth and throw on a little rock and roll. Today's going to be one of those chill days. I got a spot that I'm the only man on earth, and that's where we're headed. Detroit Bob, it's another Motown Minute. I'm out here on the lake, and I'm looking for a nice chill spot to categorize some of my records that I picked up at RPM yesterday. So let's see how I do. think I'll sit back, put on my Northern Soul playlist, and have myself a White Claw. Hey, RockMine is the name of the show, and I just got this box in the mail from Rick. And Rick is a guy I went to high school with in Detroit, Metro Detroit, Redford, whatever you want to call it. But he just sent me a box full of 45s. So I think that's going to be its own episode. And I got to go back into the origins of like what it was growing up in Metro Detroit and going to this high school where Rick and I met, and what that had to do with my rock and roll acumen and what kind of imprint that had. So that's going to take a whole episode to unwind. I might even have to pull out the full yearbooks and like show you guys what the hell was going on in my world at that time. But a lot of these posters behind me have a lot to do with it. So cheers, hang on. We'll get you into Michigan this episode, and then we'll get you into Ground Zero, where it all happened from 77 to 81 right after that. So sit tight.